Your your video is not that good, but that's probably because of the
Yeah, I turned
Wi-Fi.
the resolution down just so it could
Yeah,
stream better
doesn't
and the audio is
freeze.
better. Yeah, and if I don't look too crystal clear and beautiful, so be it. The people are gonna have to suffer one time.
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, so episode 12 here. It's interesting that uh YouTube, the last ones that we released, it seems like they were squashed or something. It was weird. I
They
thought they were
probably
pretty
don't
good.
like. They probably
Yeah,
don't
the
like the
content.
content. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
it may
interesting.
be too argumentative. Oh, the
Well,
other
it's just
thing, besides talking about the fact that Congress is not funding TSA, we
yeah,
may also want to talk about the verdict that came down in California regarding damages from
so like Facebook and
Meta.
stuff.
Say again?
Yeah, Meta and Google or something.
Yeah, Meta and actually YouTube, which is Google, but it's
Yeah.
YouTube was the
Okay.
actual.
Yeah, I haven't done
Uh,
too much research on it, but I'd like to hear about it. It's a federal ruling, I'm guessing, not a state.
it was in the state court
Oh,
in the
okay.
state. Yeah, so it's in California, and basically they said that the jury found that Meta and YouTube were liable because they're
Like something about children or something.
well, yeah, that their algorithms are created to suck kids in, and they knew they were doing that.
Yeah, of course,
That
that's what they should be doing. I mean, their
well,
job is to
yeah,
keep
oh,
people entertained, just like it's a restaurant's job to keep people happy with the food that they make and coming back. Like that's
right. But
just
I think the argument was that it's kids like under the age of 13 that are being sucked in and taken advantage of. So the settlement was 3 million, but now they're going to do punitive damages because
yeah,
what
yeah.
because well, I'm just trying to give you the background of
No,
what
I
happened,
get it. No, okay.
because that it was intentional what they were doing, and that they shouldn't be doing that, trying to hook kids in as young children to be groomed to always use those two, and I'm sure they're using other than YouTube and Facebook. So
Yeah.
that's what the ruling
So
was.
what are your
So
thoughts on that?
I have mixed emotions, and I really haven't given it much thought because we went out to have a wonderful dinner
Nice.
and some good conversation. But I mean, I understand. I think I understand the basis of the ruling, or that the jurors found in the plaintiffs
Mhm.
that children are easily
Influenced. I mean, it's like that
yeah,
with everything.
yeah,
Well, of course.
and that as a company you should have some uh moral compass that presents, so you're not overly influencing the kids. Now I mean, I don't know enough about what it was, you know, but the genesis was that they're doing this intentionally, which of
Of
course
course.
businesses do
Right.
intentionally.
Yeah.
And and the jury felt that they should not be doing that to young kids in the formative years like this. There, I think the the person that brought this at the time, she was like started watching things at 6 or 10 years old. She's 20 years old now.
It's all
So,
bullshit.
and
The whole thing's bullshit. I hate
yeah,
it.
and
I
I
hate all of
don't,
it.
and I don't know, I don't think that from what I heard, and there hasn't been a lot on it because it just happened a couple hours ago, just before we were going out to dinner, was that the whole basis was there really wasn't a lot of negative to her personally, per se. It was a
Mhm.
$3 million settlement. Well, not
Yep.
settlement, judgment. The
Mhm.
bigger thing is, and that was, I think the emphasis was that companies should not be
Influencing
utilizing,
children under a specific age. I mean,
right,
that's what it comes down to with all of this. It's just
right,
like, okay, so if you take it out, it's like basis, right? It comes down to, of course, there's somebody that's going to play the victim, and I don't know the ins and outs. I'm just going off of what you've said and
right,
what I think about that. Like this type of thing happens a lot because it's big bad corporation taking advantage of young kids and the youth, and they're bad for doing this. And instead of it being the parents' responsibility, right? Everybody can always point a finger at somebody else or another company for something that negatively, quote unquote, impacted somebody. So if you take this at the core for what it is, okay, so then open up lawsuits against Coca-Cola because Coca-Cola makes drinks that are there to make people like them and drink it more and more. Okay, open up a lawsuit against Pizza Hut because they're making their pizzas so they're very scrumptious for young kids. And
yeah,
wait, hold on a second. Let me just finish. Same thing with McDonald's. They put, a little toy in the Happy Meal, and that food isn't healthy. So that's McDonald's influencing kids to go eat unhealthy things. And then, so that is the fundamental problem with the United States and the society in general, is that it's always pointing a finger, not taking personal responsibility for yourself, for your kids. And it's like, cool, if you don't want your kids to be online, then that's your job as a parent to show
right,
them why doing this, there's other healthy ways to live, right?
right, right. No,
I hate
and
it.
that was brought up, of course, and I don't
Yeah.
think there's anybody disagreeing with that. Parents have a responsibility, but I don't know that it's exactly the same as uh, Pizza Hut pizza using great ingredients, because, and to be honest,
Okay, so let me
wait a minute, let me
yeah,
finish
yeah.
now.
Yeah, I got you.
Now, when you look at things, part of what's going on with regards to food, and Robert F. Kennedy, what he's doing is exactly kind of what you were talking about. He's saying, look, this isn't food. We should not be giving this and pushing this on the people in the United States.
Yeah, but hold on a
Is
second.
there,
Yeah,
you've kind of brought us to a different place. Is
yeah.
there a responsibility to know what is in food, what is going on with the algorithms?
Yeah.
Is,
So here's
is
the
it
thing.
okay? Is it okay that back in the 40s and 50s and 60s, when the tobacco companies knew that tobacco was not good for your health, that they hid that? So there is got to be some corporate responsibility within the
No, there
space.
doesn't need to be. There doesn't need to be. I
So in other
disagree with
words,
all
oh,
of
wait,
it.
wait, wait, wait. So you're saying that if a company, Philip Morris, has
Yeah,
done research and their research shows that, this is not good for your health, you
yeah.
think it's okay for them to continue to sell it without any kind of warning that it's dangerous to your health? That's what your belief is.
I am for personal responsibility and taking, I'm answering your question. Okay. So what you're saying, I hear you. And what you've asked me is, do I think that Philip Morris or any company, Facebook, Meta, TikTok, whatever it is, should take responsibility for their products? Okay. The only time they should take responsibility for their products is if they knowingly kill somebody. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean that because tobacco is tobacco, this is what I'm saying is if somebody is lacing something that they knowingly, right, know is going to really harm somebody for their benefit. Here's the thing. When the government, especially the federal government, gets involved, what ends up happening is these big companies get in bed with like the lobbyist groups get in bed with government. So what ends up happening is they end up writing law to actually help big companies. So what ends up happening is the larger companies can say, hey, listen, you see this? We followed the guidelines from this agency. Meanwhile, this
They
big
created those guidelines.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
So,
Hold
so
on.
wait a minute.
Look,
So that goes
let
against
me,
what you're saying.
no, it doesn't.
Okay.
Okay. So the difference is this: individuals should have personal responsibility, companies should have responsibility. And so the reason we're in the place that we're in is because what we think as a society, and because of the money hungry lawyers, and because of the lobbyists and the big companies, okay, what they do is they hire lobbyists to go to one centralized government with all their money, and they say, hey, listen, as long as we can write laws like this, number one, it's going to make it harder for our competition that's trying to start up and compete against us. Because if you take pharmaceutical companies, right, it's like, oh, in order to, have a medicine go through all these different steps, it's going to cost $50 million. Okay. And then what ends up happening is when, let's just say, a specific medicine is harming people, now this company that knew that, hey, this is an addictive drug, we're going to make a ton of money off this. But what did they do? They hired lobbyists to go to Washington, D.C. to plead the case that this is better for society than it's harmful, right? And as long as we can pass these guidelines and the government says, yeah, we're good. So now they grease the pockets, they donate to all these congressmen, they get bills passed knowingly. So now what happens is they're protected by the government because the government said, hey, you followed what we prescribed as being okay, even though it's really just written by their lobbyists to do harm. So then what ends up happening is when shit starts going south, right? Now the companies have a shield in front of them, which is, hey, listen, we were just following this guideline, right? So the solution is this: personal responsibility, number one. Second is businesses have to take their own responsibility. So that means that if an individual or a class action lawsuit is brought against a company, that company could be held criminal liability for what they're doing, right? And they can't use, we followed these guidelines, okay? Because
Well, I don't mean to interrupt, but I don't think that's what was happening in the court today, that Meta and YouTube said, well, we were following the guidelines. That is definitely not, I did not hear that as anything. And there's some incongruency in what you're saying, because you're saying that from my position, what I'm hearing you say is that, oh yeah, if a company does something and it kills someone, well, there's harm that can be done before somebody dies. So I mean,
Well, first of
and
all,
let's, and,
this is
and let's take what Kennedy is doing right now,
hold on
because
a second.
he's
I don't want to get off topic really quick. You will never be able to stop bad shit from happening, okay? Because that's just in the world. That's how societies have always lived. People try new things, new procedures are tried. What you have to do is you have to start accepting responsibility. That's the best way, because instead of somebody always thinking, or the parents always thinking, oh, the government's going to protect us from cradle to grave.
I don't
No,
disagree. I totally agree with you that, and that was my first thing. Hey, parents shouldn't let their kids
but
be on that when they're 10 years old.
so, and here's the thing, it could go back to playing video games, and back before that it could have been, oh, you can't use yo-yos because the yo-yos were invented and kids were playing with yo-yos a lot. So there can always be this, oh, this isn't healthy, and this made me lazy when I got older, and now I can't get a job, and now I'm pointing the finger at you. It's just bullshit to me. It's somebody that doesn't want to take personal responsibility. I think it's the biggest sickness, other than people unable to control what they eat and just being gluttonous. Those two things, right? Like placing blame and victimhood is rampant in our society, and I think that's what makes America weak. And it's because of all these social programs. Now, I just have to talk about the difference between Meta and, let's just say, cigarettes, okay? So the Meta thing, which is, oh, what they're saying is you are creating an algorithm that is making it more enticing for somebody to stay online and look at content, right? Like they're finding shit that you watch longer and that you like, and they're giving you more of that. They're catering to an individual. Okay, that's amazing. That's what should be happening. Like you should be getting things that you like easier in everything. Now it's your job to say, hey, or it's your parents' job to say, hey, listen, I get you want to be online, you want to look at these videos, but now it's time for us to go outside and we're going to play baseball. Or you only got so much time to do this because I want you to be well-rounded. And so it's just bullshit to me. I think it's a weak mentality, and I think of course a jury is going to feel bad because, oh, this happened to them, and what's $3 million to Meta and Google? Oh, they make, and you guarantee in this case, they said, oh yeah, Meta makes 400 billion a year and Google makes 460 billion a year, and it only harmed this person 3 million. Okay, yeah, we feel bad for this person. Give them 3 million. And the jury's not thinking about, the philosophical harm that this ruling ends up doing. Like I think it's just weak. I always hate.
And as I said, I don't know enough. My initial reaction was similar to what you just said, that it's a parent's responsibility when kids are growing up to control how much and what they're watching. Do they really need their own cell phone at 7 years old and be able to get on the internet and watch Facebook? Right. And so I mean, I hear
like
that.
Back in the day, it was.
I think we opened up a good thing to talk about, actually.
But really quick, you would agree that in every time in society, there's always going to be these things that somebody's going to be able to play the victim on, whether it's video games, whether it's music that comes out. It's just like,
I agree.
Okay, cool.
But going back.
How's that look?
Oh, terrific. Oh, God. Um, let's go back to the responsibility that drug companies, food companies, I've been a proponent of Robert Kennedy when he first started running for president, because I think a lot of the things he said made a lot of sense. Part of what he's doing now in his position is to look at what was going on and how, and he's the first one to say it. Look, I needed to get rid of these people because they were in bed with the people that they're supposed to be.
So that is the issue. Okay. The issue is when there's corruption, when there's
Right.
corporatism, when there are lobbyists and big companies in bed with government. The solution for me always is the government should not have a say. Because if the government does not have a say in creating law, lobbyists cannot sway. They cannot fund things to make it so they are shielded. That's the big thing. They block out competition and they reduce their liability when a case is brought towards them. Because if they can get the FDA to pass yellow 5, and then it comes out that 1,000 people died from yellow 5, they could say, hey, listen, we brought it to the FDA. The FDA ran tests knowingly that, let's just say Frito-Lay knew, like, oh, we kind of know from working with this shit every day that it's really not good. I'm just making it up, but we can get it passed by the FDA and it's going to look more attractive. So they are knowingly getting something passed and lobbied that they know can be harmful. And then when it is brought about, they're not held criminally responsible, as opposed to get the federal government completely out of it. Because right when you give the federal government or a government the authority to make law, they can make law the opposite way because you're giving them the power. That's just how it is. So what you're saying right now, and this always happens, you're saying, oh, I like this person. This person is good. They're in the government. They're going to do good for us. So let's give them the power to do good. Well, right when you give them power, then what happens is somebody else comes in. Their then pockets are lined by lobbyists, and they have the power.
That's great. You're saying there should be, but I think that the government does have a responsibility to make sure that businesses are responsible for what they're doing. And going back to the cigarettes is the perfect example. Perfect example when they knew that that was harmful to your health, but they didn't let anybody know. So how should that have worked in your opinion?
I'm telling you, there's a lot of money in tobacco legislation, alcohol legislation, just lobbyists. You're giving this face like there's not a lot of money.
I don't know that there was any laws on tobacco regulations back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. That's what I'm trying to look up. I don't think there was.
Okay, what I'm saying is because there was a smaller federal government and a smaller budget, what ends up happening over time is you get an expansion of the federal government. There is more power. What ends up happening is these lobbyists and these big companies get in bed. They are the ones that get officials elected. Why do they get officials elected? Because they can influence them to pass laws to make it harder for their competition to get going and compete against them so they can have less competition, which means more profits for them. And they can pass laws with agencies that actually shield them from liability. That is what is happening. So my solution is extremely simple. That is, government should not be involved. Businesses should have responsibility, which means if it is found that Philip Morris knowingly was putting things in something that were addictive to people, knowing that it could harm them and kill them and create cancer, then people should be able to take them to court and hold them criminally liable and bankrupt their entire company. That is not done right now. What ends up happening is the government has to be involved with these cases. The government picks up the cases, and the government is against Philip Morris. And Philip Morris says, hey, listen, we passed these laws. The federal government gave us these guidelines, and we abided by them.
Okay, so
It's full responsibility.
Anthony, so I just checked. Okay, and the problem with what you're saying specifically to the tobacco company is not accurate, because there was, and this, I'm reading this, there was no meaningful federal regulation regarding tobacco. Before the 50s, there were no required warning labels, no advertising restrictions, no requirements to disclose health risks. As a matter of fact, marketing cigarettes as safe and healthy was being done.
Hold on a second.
So there was no legislation that protected them.
Dad, you have missed my entire point. So maybe you were reading. No, I think you were reading while I was, I mean, good thing this is recorded. Go back and watch it. What I'm saying is that the lobbyists and the corporatism, which is big money lining pockets of our officials, has grown. Hold on. So what I was saying is, back then in the 50s, there was not as much regulation, if any. It has gotten more regulated. The point that I am making is that the regulation does not help. What helps is holding companies completely accountable, criminally liable. I'm talking about that if it's found that Philip Morris knowingly did something with tobacco, did not warn people, and people died from it, number one, the people that were pushing that could be held criminally liable. That means you're locking them up because they killed people, number one. Number two, you should be able to sue them into bankruptcy. And they cannot stand behind a shield that there was these regulations that we followed. That is a security blanket for them. And you left the meeting. Maybe you got really upset. Now it says I'm the only one that's in this meeting. So now I got to talk to myself until you come back, because you thought you were raising your hand or something and you pressed the hang up button. So now I got to sit here and up, and there you are.
Somehow got cut off. So then let me ask you, because based on what you just said, you said that government shouldn't be in there protecting these companies.
Right.
Now, we started off,
Wait, hold on.
you said that people should be able to sue those companies for doing something, and who decides who's right or wrong? A jury, correct?
The court system, whether they want to have a jury by trial or they want to have the judge decide.
So you just said that what happened in California against Meta and YouTube is wrong. Yet that's the exact procedure you were just saying should be used.
No, hold on a second.
So because they didn't
let me explain.
They didn't come to the conclusion that you would have wanted, it's not a good conclusion.
No, you're missing. I'm sorry. We're talking about two different things. So let me try to clarify. I may disagree with what a jury decided.
Okay.
That's a completely different. So what I'm explaining is, listen, Philip Morris could have done everything that they could have done to tell people things were bad. And in my opinion, I could be like, hey, they went over and beyond. And a jury could still say, you were negligent, you owe this much money. Okay, that's different. So the court system is different than government agencies. I just want to make sure that we're clear on that.
Court system is a government agency. Go ahead.
No. Okay.
Anthony, let me say this, because this will clear up a lot of things. Number one, I agree that a big problem with our system are the lobbyists, because you're right. They're writing laws that help their industry. And legislators are getting paid off or money put into their coffers so they can continue to run for office. I do not disagree with that one iota. I totally agree with that. So we're in total agreement there that they work to make it good for their industry and not for the people that their industry is serving.
So let me ask you this. First of all, I need to clarify one thing, okay? You're saying that the court system is the government, okay? Of course,
no, I said it's a portion. It's a portion of the government.
Okay,
I mean, the court system.
What I'm explaining is the difference between a government creating agencies and laws for civil lawsuits or criminal lawsuits to protect people, as opposed to regular court system laws, like that companies can be held criminally liable, which is you are harming somebody.
Right. And this court case was not a criminal. It was a civil suit. So what you're saying is you're talking about criminal suits
like
as
this
opposed
person
to civil.
Yeah, this person could say, "Hey, listen, you harmed me because of these things, and these are my what is it called when you have there has to be in a court system, there has to be detriment, like I forget what the heck it's called.
A loss or injury or
injury, a loss. Yeah, exactly. Injury or loss. Somebody has to be harmed, right? In a suit. So cool. If somebody wants to say you harmed me in this manner, okay, well, you can use the court system, and you don't need, you don't need the state of California to bring up the lawsuit against Meta, right? To protect the people. The people can do a class action lawsuit against a company.
And this was not the state of California bringing suit against Meta and YouTube. It was a person that brought the suit. Yes, you're right.
Juries, judges, listen, they make rulings that I don't agree with all the time. I'm talking about the system that's underneath it, that's bigger, right? Like I don't know enough about this specific case, but from what you told me, like I would just say, yeah, I don't agree with the jury, right? But if it was a judge, the judge is less emotional maybe, and the judge may say, no, like your kids are using Instagram and whatever because they like it, and they also drink soda, and they also play video games. So do you just want to start suing everybody? Like, no, you can't do that. You take care of your kids, right? Like tell them to stop doing that. So now with the Robert F. Kennedy thing, I can agree with the things that Robert F. Kennedy agrees with, right? Like I think sugar is harmful for people. I think there's a lot of things in the drug industry that are horrible for people. I think smoking is horrible. So just because there's a better way to live doesn't mean you strip everybody's freedom to make those choices. Because when you give the government the ability to tell people what they can and can't do with your body, you lose freedom at a fundamental level. And so I'm for personal responsibility. And at the same time, that means that, hey, listen, if you're smoking, cool, smoke all you want, but I'm not going to pay
For your illness.
bill. That's it. Right. And that's the issue. That's the fundamental issue. So you have to have, if you want freedom, you have to have personal responsibility. And I'm for freedom and personal responsibility. So I can agree with Robert F. Kennedy, but I don't think the government should force people not to smoke cigarettes.
So then let me ask you this, because part of what they're doing is they're not going to allow SNAP, which is basically the food stamps for people that need help, to buy certain things like soda and candy, because they're saying, 20% of the federal subsidy goes to pay for soda and candy. We want them to eat good food. So what is your position on something like that? Should the government say, hey, we're giving you a subsidy, but we want you to have good food, real food, not junk food?
So here's the thing. Of course, I don't even want the subsidies. That's the issue.
No, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
But that's the fundamental, that's really the fundamental
Okay, that's
discussion.
fine. Yes, right.
Okay. So I would say personal responsibility is, hey, we're not giving you handouts. Like you have to care more about it. Now, if there is a government program like there is, then yeah, like the government should be able to make it as strict as they want. Like you got to eat freaking vegetables and, meat and whatever. And you can't have anything with sugar because the government thinks that this is what's best. And you know what? If you're going to eat off the government and everybody's pitching in for your food, hey, you don't get to eat the things that you just want to eat, right? You can't just drink soda.
That are harmful.
Yeah. So if you want to drink that,
because it then costs the government on the other end because people are obese. I mean, yeah, okay, so good. So we agree with that. All right.
But first of all, the government is nobody. It's everybody. The government is just, it's not and I think that a lot of times people say the government. So they disconnect themselves with, no, that's my money. That's mine. Yeah. That's definitely. So you always have to think of me. I'm the one funding this.
Right.
Not putting yourself an arm's length away, because it's easy to say, yeah, I don't give a shit. Right. You have to think of it that way. So,
right.
Okay.
Good. So, boy, we agree a lot of what we're talking about tonight. This is boring.
Nah, it's good. I mean, I think there was definitely disagreements. For sure.
But philosophically, I hear what you're saying. And
at the end of the day, it's the nice thing to say, and it's the emotional thing to say that the governments should protect us and make our lives beautiful. I don't think that's the role of a government, right? To tell us what we can and can't do. I think it's the role of the government to ensure that there is a good system in place, that there is a good court system that they don't have an influence on, but it's there and it operates so people can come and settle their disputes in a fair court system, that if there's somebody that's black and somebody that's white, that they're both being treated equally. That's what the government's job is there for, to make sure that there's always fairness in the system, not to protect one person over another or to protect somebody from doing something harmful for themselves. We need personal responsibility.
You don't have any argument from me on that.
Okay. And so when we go back to the 50s, when there weren't these laws, right? I would tend to think that the people back in the 50s had so much more personal responsibility for their families. They had more of a work ethic. They weren't as lazy. Why? Because they weren't protected. They weren't getting handouts. We have made a weak society. And
Yes.
that is the fundamental issue. And that is why when I fight back on these things that we're talking about, you're saying, hey, listen, back then, there wasn't funding and there weren't these laws for Philip Morris. And I'm saying, damn right. And it was much better back then. There was a
Yeah.
stronger society back then.
Yes. And you know, when you look at some of the social programs and the people that have received those benefits, that has not helped them improve their life. It has created a lifestyle.
Them.
Yes, it has created a lifestyle, and that's a sad thing.
This is what, at the core, that's all I'm talking about.
Yeah.
When you give that to the government, people do not take responsibility. Then they can't take responsibility for their kids. Then they are the victim. Then they get the free handouts. It is a sickness. It is so bad, and it's what cripples a nation. The reason why the US is the way it is because our dollar has reigned supreme, and we've had funny money, and we can print money at will, and we can fund all these things, and it makes a dumbed down nation. Now, when the US back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, I thought we were a much stronger, responsible, innovative, and I think people worked much harder. And if we had that now, forget about it. We would be so much better off. The reason why we're better off now is because of our military and our dollar. It has protected the dumbness and the consumerism and the laziness. It's bad.
Well, I can't disagree that, you know, I just look at my parents' generation and what they were like, and even my generation, because, you know, I grew up in the 50s, the 60s, when, you know, you worked. I mean, I've started working when I was 12 years old.
Yep,
And,
damn right.
and I've always worked, and I've always worked more than one job.
Right. And so what happens is they say, oh, this is child, you know,
Labor.
abuse. Yeah, whatever it is. It's like, listen, the kids that go out there and they set up a lemonade stand and their parents teach them to do that, those are the people that take care of themselves when they get older, and they make the world a better place, right? Now, it's another thing that if somebody's forced to work in a sweatshop,
right,
and you're killing, like, that's.
And the sad thing now is that kid out there trying to sell lemonade.
Yeah.
Somebody complained, the cops have to come and shut it down.
That happened to me. That happened to me in Pepperwood. When I was a kid, I had a lemonade stand, and I remember the cops came by the house, and I had to shut down my lemonade stand because I don't have a license, right? Like, that's that bullshit. So, but whatever.
Sad.
And
it's sad. It's sad.
Yeah.
We have definitely gone in a bad direction.
Yeah. So the easy thing is the solution more government?
No.
Or less government?
No, I don't want more government.
Okay. So then these things where you think JFK knows the best way, just think about this. Does it expand the power of the government? And if it does, I'm against it because it makes a weak society. It doesn't make people responsible for their own.
What he's doing is, and I think the biggest thing that he's doing is he's bringing awareness to these issues. And then people start looking at it. And I mean, I've done things differently. We're buying things differently. We're looking at labels. We're looking at how much added sugar there is. We're looking at what kind of oils.
I'll say this. Most likely, so I'm not opposed to a government putting out information that could help people make decisions.
Right.
I think that most people get their information from their peers, from online. They see it more. It's not like, oh, the government's saying this, the more and more there's freedom of information, there's this information spreads. And that is why the freedom of speech is so important, right? So the government isn't the solution. It is when you take responsibility and you do your own research because you know the government isn't there to protect you, you're going to be much better off because you're spending your own energy to do your own research to have a better life.
But here's the thing. When you say do your research, I can't do research on the effects of red dye number 3. I can't do, no, I can't. Somebody's doing the research and then I'm looking at the research. So I think the government's role is to provide that information as one of the ways for us to gain information to make informed decisions.
I get it. But what you are doing, it's going back to the same thing. You're putting your responsibility and you're giving the government more resources that could be swayed. You think so? I forget, like Thomas Jefferson said,
Anthony, wait a minute. Who's going to do the initial research on the effects of tobacco, the effects of sugar, the effects of dyes, the effects of glycerin?
I'll tell you this.
Who's going to do the research?
I guarantee you that there are more things have been proven by individuals or separate entities that do their own independent research and find these issues than the government times 100. So,
well, the government, you're right. The government doesn't necessarily do the research. They fund universities and other entities to do the research. There's not a lot of government research centers.
But here, this goes back to the discussion we had last week, which was about government pushing specific programs. Once again, lobbyists push this program.
Anthony, let's not talk about lobbyists because we already agree that lobbyists are the problem.
I get it. But what you're saying is governments fund independent research to universities. And the last time you had a discussion with me was about that the government was funding universities to push bullshit. And now this is at the base, that's what you're saying is okay for this? Because you think that because RFK is in, that, okay, let's give the government that ability because they should fund this research. But then last week you're saying we shouldn't allow the government because they're pushing all these this liberal shit that is bad in universities. This is what we discussed this last week.
We were talking about education.
It's the same thing.
Not research. We're talking about the liberalization of education.
Dad, is it government funding that is pushing a specific motive?
No, I think in the universities, I think it's more people behind the scenes, not the government.
That's it. The funds are coming from the government.
No. That's not true. There are people that fund universities at huge amounts of funding, and they are the ones that I believe are behind a lot of what goes on in the universities, not the federal government, the people behind the government, the people that really have the power, because the government really does not have as much power as we probably think they do.
Oh, they have a tremendous amount of power, but this will bring us to another discussion that most people will agree with with how you think about this. But You were just saying that individuals or entities fund universities, okay? And most people, 99% of them, would say they shouldn't be able to do that, right? These companies or these peoples shouldn't be able to give their money to universities to push specific ideals or whatever, right?
Okay.
Okay. And that's the way that I think that you're going with this. And my whole view is that strips away freedom of speech. So while I may disagree with somebody pushing some bullshit in a university that I think is a horrible concept or uh, you know way of thinking, I still would never strip them of their ability to do that, because it's the other individual that thinks a different way to push their message. And that's freedom. That's freedom.
That,
That's not
but see, that's inherently what I believe is wrong, especially with higher education, that professors should not be teaching a mindset. They should be creating dialogue so students can share different
you're
opinions.
okay. Let's just get down to the basics. What you want is social engineering to some
No,
extent.
no, no, just the opposite. That's what's happened. Look, if you talk to
That
people at the
you
university level, if you
it's
talk to
so
people at the university level, Dr. Zhang is one of them, where there are, instead of creating dialogue and having different opinions and discussing it, that's
Dad,
what should be going on in universities. That
Dad.
is not what's going on. He says it.
Okay,
It's
listen.
indoctrination. He went to Yale, and
Oh my
that's what
God,
was happening.
Dad, I don't disagree with what you're saying.
Okay, good.
Okay, because that makes sense. Okay, but how do you get there? Do you put a camera and a buzzer on every single professor's neck, and you have to listen to it through AI? And when they start indoctrinating, and they're not just uh, starting discussions, you shock them. So
Well,
while what
let me
you're
just
saying
okay.
sounds
So
good, I mean,
let me say how it should happen. The way I
okay,
think it happens.
real quick,
First of
real
all,
quick.
the administration has a fiduciary responsibility to ensure that it's education, not indoctrination. So when you are interviewing your prospective professors, you need to talk about that.
Dad,
And you need to say, this is what we expect at our university,
listen,
not
I
to
get what
teach
you're,
people
Dad.
what to think,
Oh
but to
my God,
teach them how to think.
Dad.
Yes.
What you're saying makes sense. Okay. And so if I were to start a university, that's what I would do. Okay. Or you would do. But are you saying that that should be forced on every university by the government?
What should be forced?
Whatever this is that this is how universities should, make sure they're operating. Like, you're giving a way to you're giving a process or a way that you think something
No.
should be done. What
Yeah, you agree with what I'm saying. The issue is how do you make that happen? How do you make it
it,
happen instead of indoctrinating?
the what I
How do you
like to
do it?
talk about,
How do you do it?
what I like to talk about is not all these little intricacies of this is the best way, that's the best way. Because listen, there's going to be 5,000 different people with 5,000 different opinions of the best way to do this. What I like to talk about is what is the role of the government in this, right? So what you're saying makes sense. And that's the reason why I love freedom, because the best way to do things will end up rising to the top. Why? Because the individuals that graduate from those universities will be the most successful because they make sense. What I like to talk about is what is the role of the government. And what I think
There's
is that
no role from your position. They should have no say in anything.
exactly,
Okay, so why are we talking about the role of government? There, from your perspective, the role of government should have absolutely nothing to do, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But
Agreed.
the problem that I have is what happens when schools become indoctrination.
Listen,
How do you deal with that? How do you deal? And I know you don't want to talk about that. To me, that would be an interesting thing to hear how you would solve the problem.
Right. And it's very simple, because what you're thinking is indoctrination. Okay.
No, I'm not.
Well, that's what you said. You said indoctrination. How do you stop
I said
this?
it shouldn't be indoctrination.
Okay. What the concept we're currently talking about, the subject is indoctrination. Okay. Now, you have to define what indoctrination is. Okay. And then you have to say, okay, is this indoctrination or is this? And if this is indoctrination, are you saying that the federal government should have the ability to throw that out? That is what I'm saying.
I'm not even saying that. What
Okay,
I'm saying is indoctrination is when universities are pushing ideas onto students as opposed to having dialogue with different ideas. So Anthony, we're beating a dead horse.
No, we aren't.
I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go spend some time with my lovely wife.
Okay, but
and this is getting me nowhere.
I am trying to facilitate a conversation that is a different discussion. Like, I'm agreeing. So you're saying that universities should not be able to push certain agendas that are indoctrinating people, right? That's what you're saying.
Right.
Okay. So let's just stick there. So would you agree that there may be something that you feel is indoctrination, but somebody else doesn't feel that? They think that it's good.
No, I don't agree with that.
No. I'm saying that there's going to be certain subjects that you feel are harmful and indoctrinating and not good. And at the same time, that same subject, somebody else is going to think isn't indoctrination and it is good, right?
No, you're missing the whole point. Indoctrination, from my perspective, is when one ideology is fostered upon students, as opposed to saying, here's one way people look at it, here's another way people look at it. Let's discuss that. That then is not indoctrination.
Right. I get that.
So Anthony, we're beating a dead horse. I'm done talking about this tonight. We're not getting anywhere. I don't want to sit here and waste my time. You know, I'm old. I don't have a lot of time left to waste.
You know when you're talking about just a different way to have a discussion to get people to think. What you're discussing right now, I'm just trying to explain that you're saying that they shouldn't be able to push a specific agenda that indoctrinates, and that they should have to facilitate discussion on both sides, right?
Yes.
And I agree with that is the best way, because then you have open dialogue and you get more information. So I agree with that concept.
Okay, so that's why I say we don't need to discuss it anymore.
But what I'm saying is you have to get to, how do you solve that problem? Are you saying, hold on, that the government should step in to solve that problem?
I don't know how to solve it. I know how if I was the president of a university, I know how I would solve it at my university. Agreed. I don't know how to solve it for the country.
Agreed. And so what you would do as your university president is, when you're interviewing your professors, you would say, hey, what's your style of teaching? Take me through one of your curriculum, and I'm going to see how we would discuss this. And you would make sure that you're hiring people, that professors that actually wanted both sides and just facilitated discussion and said, well, how about this? And would press on this. I'm discussing something different. It's the role of government, because that's what we're here to discuss.
Hey, there's no role of government. That's fine. I'll agree to that.
Okay, that's it. That's all I'm saying.
Well, that's all I said. We don't need to. We're done.
Okay, so then you don't think that the government should, number one, fund universities, and they definitely shouldn't fund universities to push a certain ideology. You think that the government should get out, which means if that's the case, that means that the federal government should not, even if you think a university is indoctrinating, the federal government has no right to tell them you can't do that. That's freedom. That's the philosophical discussion. That's what I've been trying to prove, is when you say that the federal government should not have that authority they shouldn't fund, they should also not have the authority to tell Harvard they can't teach this way, that they have to teach this way. That's freedom. That's all, my entire point. That's it.
Yeah.
You can't have both. You can't have both. And that's what I was trying to get to this point, this entire discussion. It's a different way of thinking about it.
Well, the only issue is, and I'll end on this, is if you have a system that has become one that its primary mode of operating is indoctrination, that's a scary thing. That's the end. And I don't know how you fix it.
Personal responsibility. Let people figure it out. When you have a free market, the best rise to the top. Because I'll give you a for instance, and I was speaking to Joe about this, and this goes into the Iran-Israel war. Okay, you got people that are going to sit there and watch the same individuals preach the same shit, and it's false. But for some reason, they continue to get their information from whatever, Fox News or CNN. And this information ends up being wrong and being wrong again. But they continue to listen instead of saying, okay, and for me, what I've done over the past 15 years is I start out looking at all of these different sources, and what ends up happening, the best people rise to the top. Why? Because I watch them and I say, oh shit, this one thing that nobody thought was real, this one guy, Judge Napolitano, was saying this when I was watching, and it became true. Okay, I put him up higher in my rank of
So let me ask you this. Does that mean he's always right?
No, but
okay. All right.
It just means that now I have 5 different sources that I get my information from, because they have 80% of the time been right, as opposed to Fox News, Trump saying we killed all their nuclear weapons, that we completely destroyed them. They have no military. They can't defend us. We're completely wiping them. Israel's destroying them. And on the other hand, it's completely false and false and false. And these guys that I've been listening to have been saying, this is crazy that they're even saying this. What are they talking about? They think that American people are dumb enough. Meanwhile, Iran is blasting Israel, right? And now you're going to start seeing this. And you don't think the troops are going to go into Iran? You're going to see that they're going to go to Iran. Where does Anthony get this information?
I think there's a good possibility.
Damn right. And and the people on Facebook, when I posted that shit, they're like, oh, you're just trying to get a rise. Where the fuck are you getting your information? I get it from the same sources.
I'm saying,
you're going to see.
With regards to that, I think that any of those decisions are made based on what's happening. What is the goal? What is the goal? And if you're not getting to that goal, what's the next thing you have to do?
Here's when you get good data, right? Good data comes out. So if I'm taking my data in from 15 years, if I've whittled my sources down to the people that have always been the most consistent, they don't get emotional, they don't choose sides, they don't play for a team, and I get straight up info from them, and they're right 70% of the time, and I could do that across 5 different sources, and then I could figure things out, I'm so much further ahead than somebody saying, what do you mean we're not sending Marines in? I knew about this shit 2 weeks ago. And the probability of it happening, I knew back then was 70%, right? While everybody else is saying, what the fuck is this? This, like, were you just trying to get a rise out of people? No, it's because you're sitting there listening to the same stupid bullshit being fed down your throat, and you're not looking at good data. You're not getting good resources. That's on you. That's just a dumb nation. I mean, you'll see what's going to happen. I mean, shit's going down in the world right now. Yeah.
I mean, look, it's not over till it's over. And even when it's over, I don't even know that we'll know it's over.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that it's ever over.
Yeah. From what I've taken in, and I'm like a really probability pattern-based person when I make my decisions, and I make sure that the data that I'm consuming is as accurate as I can get, and I try to act like any data that I have. Oh, let me go try to prove this wrong. Let me see what other people are saying. From my great sources like Napolitano and Paul and all these guys, right? The next month is going to be crazy. And I think it's going to get, I think it's going to be a lot is going to come out in the next month.
Well, I think, yeah. And I think the big issue that's going to be the tipping point is the Strait of Hormuz.
Here's what's going to happen.
That's what I think.
Probability based. Okay. Once again, like I posted, we're going to send in troops. Those troops will get slaughtered. Okay. You're going to send them to an island to lock down that island. Yeah. You're going to protect our troops on an island in Iran. We'll just bomb the whole island and be done with the troops. Like, that makes no sense. Anyways, you send in troops, they get destroyed. Now we have a reason to go in there and drop nukes. That's Iran is not stopping, right? Trump's saying, our government's been saying it's over. It's over. We've completely destroyed them. They want to talk. Meanwhile, Iran's like, I don't know what's going on, but we're not stopping because we've already tried to negotiate and they've already killed people when we're in negotiation. We don't trust them.
There have been government officials from Iran that have said, yeah, we're in discussions. So who knows what's going to happen? Hopefully they can come to some kind of agreement. That would be great.
I hope so.
That would be great.
Listen, all I do is I put myself in Iran's shoes. If I'm Iran right now, and I know now Iraq just joined Iran, Kuwait just joined Iran. Okay. So if I know what you're making a face,
I don't think Kuwait did.
There were two nations. I know Iraq and one other nation just joined them today. If I am Iran, just thinking about it, if Israel and the US has been plaguing the Middle East, and now I'm Iran and we've taken out all of the US military bases and it's some paper tiger that thought they were going to just run over us, and we're just now just destroying whatever we want, and you think I'm going to stop?
Well, here's where I end tonight because I'm done.
Yeah.
What I was saying, I said it to Jackie. I said, I think when the government talks about how we're destroying them and they have nothing left, I said, if I'm Iran, that's getting me really pissed off. And I'm going to be that much. I said, they don't need to say that. Yeah, they don't need to say that. They should say, we've been fighting. It's bad for all of us. We don't want this to go on. No, we're destroying everything. We should not be doing that. I don't believe we should be doing it.
oh, the way that we negotiate are with bombs. Oh, okay. Yeah, just
Yeah,
keep it.
I don't like that. And look,
Horrible.
and here's my point is this. You don't say that the way it's being done on press conferences, whatever. Now, if you're negotiating with them, you can say whatever you want. You could say, "Hey guys, you ain't seen nothing yet."
Yeah, and
That's
here's the
fine.
thing.
You don't need to do it the way
And
they're
you
doing it. I see.
100%. And Trump and all them pound their chest and they think that they're so mighty because they're protected by our military and we're far away from Iran. We have all these proxies or military bases. At the end of the day, listen, this is going to be great for the world. I'm just saying that right now. Like, people are understanding that the US is just not as strong as we claim to be. And all the shit that Trump is saying it's just false. It's false. And
Well,
we're looking like idiots.
time will tell. Hopefully it works out. Hopefully there's not a ground war. Hopefully, it's hard for me to believe that anyone will ever use nuclear bombs, because that changes the world forever, and not in a good way. Not in a good way. So,
I think there's
by the way, you know what? I don't know what you did, but you were talking about your wrinkles. You don't have any today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look at that.
Because I'm just, I'm just here, surfing and taking the good,
relaxing.
All
right. Well, listen,
right,
have fun with your vacation. Love you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.